The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there and welcome to today's webinar, How the Most Successful Direct Marketing Programs Do More with Less, Best Practices that Drive Profitable Growth in the Digital Age by RPM Direct and hosted by WebAttract, the leaders in informational webinars. I'm Lori Dearman, Senior Webinar Producer with WebAttract, and I'll be your moderator and host for today's session. For those of you not familiar with RPM Direct, they provide direct mail and direct response marketing services to well-known and emerging brands. RPM has a track record of success accelerating sales through custom-tailored services including strategy, list selection, creative production, testing, mailing, and analysis. In just a moment, I'll be introducing our featured speakers, Linda Pophal and Rick Rappe, who will share strategies to improve your direct mail marketing performance and increase sales in 2013. You'll also have an opportunity to have your questions answered at the end of the presentation during our Ask the Experts panel session with both panelists. Now, we've invited you, along with over 275 professionals registered from 40 states and provinces, representing a variety of industries, all here to learn best practices of direct marketing programs across multiple industries and how to incorporate them as an important part of your customer acquisition marketing strategy. Regardless of your industry segment or your location, we're confident you'll find today's webinar of value. Now, speaking of feedback, I would like to go to our first poll for today and I'd like to hear from all of you. What are your biggest direct mail challenges? Now, technically speaking, you could select all that apply, but on the honor system today, we're asking you to let us know your top two. Is it increasing response or sales? Is it cutting costs? Improving conversion rates? Integrating offline and online campaigns? Or getting started with direct mail? Go ahead and let us know where you're at. And again, we'll be sharing those out with everybody in just a few. All right, folks, let's go ahead and close that poll up and see what everybody is saying. We've got 70% increasing response and sales, 20% cutting costs, 46% improving conversion rates, 36% integrating offline and online campaigns, and 11% of you saying getting started with direct mail. So looks like that increasing response and sales is our front runner, and this information is very helpful for our speakers as they go through their presentations today. So thanks so much for taking a moment to share it with us. Now, without further ado, I would like to bring up our first speaker of today. We have Linda Pophal, owner and CEO of Strategic Communications and a marketing and communications strategist with experience in traditional and online direct marketing. Pophal specializes in helping clients integrate elements of their communication campaigns to achieve optimum results. She has developed and delivered training programs for national and local audiences on all aspects of marketing communication management. Pophal is accredited through the American Marketing Association and is the author of Direct Mail in the Digital Age. Hi, Linda. It's so great to have you with us today. How are you?
Hi, Lori. I'm great, and I'm very excited about being here.
Now, Linda, before we get started on the topic at hand, can you tell us all how you came to writing a book on direct mail in the digital age?
Sure. Well, actually, I started my career years ago in the traditional direct mail industry, and I loved it. Back in 1992, a long time ago, I wrote a book on direct mail marketing, which had become outdated over the years because of the digital revolution, obviously. But a few years ago, as I was starting to observe how cluttered the online space was getting to be, and I was reading a lot about consumer frustration with junk mail and overly full email boxes and obtrusive pop-up ads, etc., I thought, maybe it's time for a return to traditional direct mail. Marketers, I thought, might have an opportunity to capitalize on what was becoming a quieter landscape out there in the traditional mailboxes around the world. So I wanted to find out if others shared my view. So I proposed an update to the book that I'd written back in 1992, A Small Business Guide to Direct Mail, which had gone out of print, and my publisher agreed. So in 2011, we released Direct Mail in the Digital Age.
Now, Linda, based on your book and, of course, in talking to you over the weeks preparing for today's webinar, I know you feel that direct marketing is not dead. So let's get the discussion rolling on this topic. And what have you found to support this statement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as Mark Twain might say, the reports of the death of traditional direct mail are greatly exaggerated. And in fact, when I was researching and writing my book, I discovered that while the direct mail landscape had changed quite a bit to accommodate and capitalize on new media, I found that I was right in thinking that the most effective marketers were beginning to seize on the ability to communicate in a less cluttered space. So I can share a few examples of what the research is telling us about this. First of all, here's a slide that shows some research from a marketing firm, Epsilon Targeting, and their latest annual consumer channel preference study, where they found that direct mail continues to be the most preferred delivery method. This study was done in 2012, and it found that 6 out of 10 Americans report that they enjoy getting postal mail from brands about new products. And as you can see from this chart, postal has a commanding lead in most categories. It takes a back seat to the internet only in the categories of hobbies, travel, and online shopping sites. So this data definitely supports my own personal beliefs, and there's more. A 2011 Direct Marketing Association study found a 4.6% uptick over 2010 for direct mail expenditures. These expenditures rose to more than $50 billion in 2011 for traditional direct mail, and the DMA is predicting continued growth of 2.4% over the next 2 years. And when you think about it, this really shouldn't be that surprising. If you think about your own interactions with both your traditional mailbox and your online inbox, you'd probably agree that your email box is much more cluttered these days and that your mailbox is much less cluttered. And guess what? Savvy marketers are noticing this as well.
Yeah, I'd have to say that rings true for me as well. And so, Linda, could you lead us through some of the specific benefits that traditional direct mail holds for marketers?
Sure, and there are a wide variety of them. So let's take a look at the really big ones here. First of all, direct mail is intrusive. We can't ignore it. It is in our mailbox and we have to do something with it, so it must be handled, and that makes an impact. In fact, messages in other advertising mediums, and particularly online, can be very fleeting. Research that was conducted by Millward Brown, a global research agency, found that reading something that can be tangibly and physically held has been proven to be more long-lasting in consumers' minds than when they look at something on a digital device. So that's one key benefit. Direct mail is also very personal. It has dimension, it has texture. We can bring it into our homes or offices, and again, it requires attention, it requires some sort of interaction. So think about this. With an email marketing message, we never actually know if the recipient ever even sees it. It may be screened at a company's firewall, it may end up in their junk mail file, never to be seen. And that's not the case with traditional direct mail. It has to be seen, it has to be handled. Direct mail can also be much more descriptive, persuasive, and emotional than online messaging. You can motivate people to action using compelling messages and emotional hooks, and you can use more detailed copy and images. You can also target very, very precisely your direct mail to those individuals who are most likely to respond. So through a thorough understanding of your target audience, careful list selection, you can precisely pinpoint those individuals that are really reflective of your key prospects and existing customers. You can make direct mail messages very personalized and very relevant. You can take a personal tone. You can focus on key benefits that are specific to certain target audience segments. And a key thing with direct mail, you can track and measure results. And then based on testing and response data, you can focus or expand your list selection to set performance levels that you want to hit. And Rick is going to be getting into a lot more detail on this later. Finally, as we've already seen, direct mail is trusted. Online communications are becoming more and more annoying to many consumers who are dealing with cluttered inboxes, frustration over spam, and concerns about privacy. So the bottom line, well-executed direct mail programs can bring big benefits. I want to take a look now at some comparisons between traditional and online direct mail. One of the big ones that typically comes up at the outset is cost. Yes, traditional direct mail can be more expensive than online marketing. That's one of the big draws that has that's moved marketers to advertise online. And frankly, it's one of the reasons that the online space has become much more cluttered. But an important point is that just because it costs more to print and mail through traditional channels doesn't mean that the results that you achieve can't support that increased cost. And that leads to the next point, higher impact. So direct mail traditionally has more immediacy, more sticking power than traditional direct mail. And so in many cases, what that means is that your return on investment is going to be higher. List rental is another interesting issue with online marketing, and one that can often cause some frustrations. Unlike traditional direct mail, where you can order and physically control your list, which is often now in some form of an electronic format, when you're doing online marketing, the owner of the list maintains control, and they will be sending the message on your behalf. That's clunky. CAN spam regulations also severely limit your ability to cast a wide net in the online world. Not so in the traditional world. Visibility, obviously very important to us, and sometimes it's an overlooked fact about online marketing is that, as I mentioned a little bit previously, there's a really good chance that your messages are not only never going to be seen, much less responded to. And again, that's not the case with direct mail. Direct mail has to be handled, and that's a big benefit. In addition to that, direct mail has staying power, which means that you can hold it, you can pass it along, you can keep it on your counter, you can pin it to your refrigerator or your bulletin board, whereas online marketing is often lost in cyberspace. Of course, one of the things that we're most concerned about in marketing is response. Online marketing response, as many of you probably realize, is generating some very dismal results these days. We'll take a look at this. This probably comes as no surprise to you. So email open rates, they're on the decline, and they are getting lower. This chart shows average email open rates by industry. Both the clutter of the online world and the sense of distrust and often even anger that's out there around unsolicited email promotions makes it increasingly difficult for marketers to break through and get noticed. In the old days, I know we used to say that for traditional direct marketing, we'd tell people, 1 to 2% response rate is really good. That's a good rate to shoot for. Well, in the online world, where we're seeing open rates of only about 12%, you can only imagine how low the response rates are likely to be. The story is even more discouraging when we look at how people respond to other forms of online advertising. So what this chart is showing is what we're seeing in terms of click-through rates for online banner ads. And again, if you think about your own online behaviors, you'd probably agree that it takes a lot to get you to click on these ads. Why? Well, again, it has to do with that distrust that we have around online communication and the fear of being spammed or getting a virus or risking our security. Now, all of this is not to say that email or online advertising doesn't have its place, because it certainly does. My key message, though, is that traditional direct mail is not only still viable, it can be the best choice for your marketing initiatives. Online marketing does have its place, and in fact, there are also some great opportunities for marketers to integrate traditional direct mail with their online efforts. A lot of marketers are successfully doing just that. In fact, I'm hearing more and more of this kind of sentiment from people I interact with online. This is just one example of a common theme in the comments I'm seeing from members of various groups that I participate in. It's pretty consistent both with what I'm hearing and with what I believe the marketing landscape is like right now.
Linda, how are marketers capitalizing on the opportunities that traditional direct mail offers, and what are some of the important trends that you're seeing for 2013?
Sure. Well, one of the big ones is that postage rates just went up this month. And those postage rates obviously are a big concern for direct mail marketers, because postage is a big part of the cost of direct mail. So that's a challenge, especially in these days of tight budgets and the need to do more with less. For all of us, it's more important than ever that we learn to be focused, that we're strategic, and that we're targeted with our mailings. And that's something that direct mail offers us the ability to do. And Rick's going to get into some additional detail later on exactly how to do that. But despite the cost increases, and this may be somewhat surprising, the Postal Service is your friend. We all know that the Postal Service is struggling, and as with any organization that struggles, they're being forced to think differently about how they interact with their audiences. And you'd better believe this: nobody is more interested in seeing a resurgence of direct mail than the Postal Service. And they do have a lot of really good resources that are all available at no cost on their website. They're out there truly to help.
All good to know, Linda. And as we close out your portion of today's presentation, what are some of the things that folks should be keeping top of mind?
Okay. Here are a few things that I think you should be keeping top of mind. First of all, the focus on data and the use of analytics is becoming more and more important as we deal with rising costs and we want to boost our response rates. There are a lot of great things that we can and should be doing to help ensure that we're getting the most impact for the least cost and effort, and you'll be hearing some of these ideas in just a bit. We touched on the benefit of personalization that direct mail brings, and this is definitely a trend that's likely to continue and one that's going to bring a lot of big benefits to marketers who think strategically and creatively about how to take advantage of these opportunities. Today's technology and the use of robust database or CRM systems allows the ability for direct marketers to personalize their messages, not just by name, but through the use of other information that they have available to them about their market. So that can include things like past purchases, where they live, etc. This can be done both through text and images. So it's possible, for instance, to do a national or even an international mailing and change images to correspond to the geography where your target audience is based. A lot of opportunities with that. Finally, as I alluded to earlier, direct mail can be used in combination with other online and other communication activities as part of an overall communication strategy. Technology offers opportunities to augment and expand what your direct mail can deliver through tools like QR codes and pearls, which you'll be hearing about more later. The bottom line and the message that I'm going to leave you with before turning you over to Rick is that with email boxes more cluttered and traditional mailboxes less cluttered, there really has never been a better time to think seriously about launching or expanding your traditional direct mail marketing efforts.
Well, Linda, thank you so much, and don't go too far as we'll be having you back to help answer some of the fabulous questions that are coming into the queue.
Great.
Now, for anybody just joining us, we just heard from Linda Pophal, who went over benefits and trends of direct mail in the digital age. And now I'd like to bring on Rick Rappe, a direct marketing leader with extensive experience developing and managing some of the largest and most successful direct marketing-driven sales channels in the country for companies like AT&T, Singular, and DirecTV, as well as many emerging brands in the financial services and telecommunications industries. His mission is to uncover hidden opportunities, deliver innovative ideas, execute flawless programs, and produce higher returns for his clients. Rick, welcome to the webinar. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Lori. Thanks. Thanks for the great introduction.
Oh, my pleasure. And now, Rick, I know you've got a few successful campaigns under your belt, to say the least, and you've seen a lot of different scenarios. So let's get the conversation going with your take on the challenges of direct marketing and some of the best practices for addressing them.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be happy to. As Linda said, even in the digital age, direct mail is still a very viable and powerful marketing tool for a lot of major companies. And when I break down the direct mail process and look at the key success factors, we can categorize them basically into these 5 major areas. And I've arranged these as a pyramid with testing strategy and tracking and analysis at the base, because in every successful program I've been a part of, these are the foundation that everything else is built upon to maximize results. So on that basis, you then have creative, offer, and targeting as the top 3 challenges that you have to address in any individual effort. So these are the things that ultimately have to be right to achieve great results. And the most successful DM programs are using the testing and measurement to optimize their creative offers and targeting. So let me jump in and go through a few best practices, starting with number 1, which is it's very, very critical to start with a clear performance and financial objective. And ask yourself, what's your definition of a successful campaign? How many responses and sales do you need to be profitable? For our clients, we usually like to establish the goals in terms of cost per sale as a key metric. And it works really well because it takes into consideration both the sales results, but also the cost of the marketing efforts. So it's a pretty quick and easy way to get a handle on profitability. We also want to consider average revenue from sales and determine how quickly we need to be able to reach a positive return on investment based on the lifetime value of that customer. So Having these clear financial goals as the starting point allows you to run some numbers and establish the right strategy and tactics from the beginning of your programs. And that leads me on to the second best practice, which is that you need to target to the right audience. And this is one of the great things that direct mail allows you to do better than any other media. The more accurately you can target the people who are likely to respond and leave out the people who will never respond, obviously, the higher your results are going to be. But this list world can be a difficult and sort of invisible world to navigate. So a lot of marketing people don't exactly understand how to get the most out of their targeting. So let me give you just a few tips and ideas about how to do that. First, use your customer base and look for the opportunities to upsell and cross-sell. Customer-focused DM programs typically perform about 5 times higher than prospecting programs, so make sure you're maximizing those opportunities first. But then you should also use your customer base to establish and profile the variables that best define your target audience, and then you can use that to pinpoint your audience for prospecting. So it gives you a huge head start. You also need to think about testing different list sources and list types, because there's a big variation in results depending on the list source. So really the only way to figure out which list source is going to give you the best performance is to test them and see how they work with your offer. You also want to take a look within those list sources at the data that can be appended beyond just the mailing address. And this can be demographic and psychographic information, and you're going to have to pay a little bit of additional cost to get this information appended into your data. But then you have that data in your database, and you can use those results to analyze the database and determine which variables are the most useful, and then use them to create a predictive model to target your audience with really, very tight accuracy. So, for example, one of our clients in the financial services industry, we append 7 to 10 different variables like education, household income into their prospecting files. And based on the past results, we've been able to develop a scoring model that allows us to put their prospect files in rank order from the most likely to respond all the way on down. And we use that to select and target the mailing files. And through this process, the accuracy of the predictive model, it really makes a huge difference in their marketing performance. It's also really important in thinking about list targeting to think about timing. If you can reach an audience at the right time in their life or in their decision-making process, they can be much, much more likely to take your offer. So an example of that would be one of our cable clients. We segment the audience and we go after the new movers with a special approach, because as people are coming into their area, they're in a decision-making mode about cable and internet services. So this performance from that particular group is about 10 times higher than the other groups that we might mail to, because they're just highly likely to be shopping and making decisions about cable TV. So overall, list targeting is a really big area to cover, but for nearly every program that I've worked on, there are really big opportunities for improvements in this area. The next best practice I want to touch on is your offer. And it's really important to make a compelling offer. When people get your mail, they're going to scan it and they're going to try to quickly determine what's in it for me. They have to gain something or save something they already have to be motivated to do anything. So your offer is what they get from taking action from your mailing. For most new programs that we get involved in, there are usually some really big opportunities to boost performance by testing new offer ideas. And an example, for one regional wireless company that we've worked for recently, they had never been able to beat their free phone offer. So we did some testing, and we suggested that we test 2 free phones, and it actually lifted response by about 30%. And the interesting thing about that was that also these responders a lot of them were buying 2 lines of service instead of 1. So this is a pretty big breakthrough for that particular client through offer testing. And we also try to think about offer positioning, which the best way that I can describe what I mean about offer positioning is finding a new creative way to phrase your offer. And a great example is Geico. What they really offer is just a free insurance quote, but they've repositioned that as 15 minutes could save you 15% on your car insurance. So Now they're offering you a shot at 15% savings. And I think that's a brilliant example of successful offer positioning, to take something that isn't that appealing and make it a whole lot more appealing than it initially was. My next best practice, once you have your list and your offer strategy handled, you can move into creative. And I think this is such a huge area to cover, and without a lot of time to get into it today, I really can't begin to do it justice. So in the interest of time, I've really tried to boil it down into one big best practice, which is to develop your creative with the prospect in mind. Creative includes copy and messaging, package format, design, call to action, and all these elements come together with your offer to form your creative package. When you review creative concepts, you should always try and see your package from the point of view of the prospect. And the person getting your message, you have to remember that they just don't care about your company or your products. They care about what's in it for them. And so first we have to get them to open that mailer and spend a few seconds to scan the image. Scan the message. That's the first and most important objective that we have to accomplish. And from there, the package has to capture attention, generate interest, create desire, and ultimately it has to generate action to be successful. The next best practice I have is in offline to online integration, and the best practice is using PEARLs and personalized landing pages. PEARL is the abbreviation for personalized URL, and that's when we actually use the prospect's name in the URL as part of the call to action. So through testing for our clients, we found that personalized URLs are going to lift the response rate, and we've seen lifts as much as 40%. And we're driving them to landing pages, which just the use of landing pages over generic, websites lift the conversion rate, because they make the online experience a continuation of the messaging and the offer that we've started in the direct mail package. And then when we link the mailing database and personalize those landing pages, we've seen as much as a 65% lift in conversion rates. And further, pre-filling the forms also increases conversions. So typically about a 25% lift in landing page conversion performance by pre-filling those forms. So overall, when you look at all these things together, you've got a really substantial cumulative effect on results of about 2.3 times the sales. The last best practice, number 6, is about measurement and analytics, and that is you have to track accurately and report quickly. So gathering results and data is just a critical step in the success of any DM program, and to make the testing strategies work that I'm going to talk about in the next section, you really have to have the tracking and analysis worked out. Otherwise, testing is meaningless. And I know a lot of companies that I consult with today, they really seem to struggle about getting all the systems in place to track and measure. So let me give you a few tips here. First, we want to create systems that capture results at each step of the sales process. So we want to capture responses and then watch those responses and see how they convert to sales. If there's more than a few steps, we want to capture at each step. But we don't want to assume that our process for capturing results is going to work perfectly right out of the gate. So we want to be sure that we are inspecting what we expect from our systems and that we build in some checks and balances. So it's very important to have some backup processes in place so you can validate the results that you're getting and make sure you're getting good tracking. For example, you might match your sales data back to your mailing data and do a matchback analysis to validate the tracking results that you're getting and make sure that you're getting accurate results. Also, you need to build a process to generate reports very quickly. So this allows you to move right into planning and implement changes very quickly based on your results. So for our clients, we're actually pre-building reports before we ever drop the mail, so that when we have the results, we can drop them right into a system and output reporting in a very, very short amount of time. And the last tip I have is to convert your results from reports to summaries of the key findings. We use PowerPoint presentations for that purpose, and they're just a valuable tool for sharing the results with the team, and also they become a great historical archive. It's hard to go through a lot of detail about tracking and analysis, so if you're interested in viewing a sample report from a test program we did, in the wireless industry. I'm going to make that available, and there'll be a chance to request that at the end of the presentation.
Now, Rick, this is a great opportunity for us to segue into your next topic, testing strategy, where I know you have some secret sauce, if you will. Can you take us through your approach to testing and how it can help businesses accelerate results?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said at the beginning, testing strategy is really the cornerstone of every successful program I've ever been involved with. And when the testing strategy is right, you can quickly uncover the right tactics, which are going to multiply your DM performance. And more importantly, with the right testing strategy, it just dramatically accelerates the process. So let me give you a few more details and an example of our testing methodology. And this example is looking at a new program, and so we're initially utilizing multivariate testing as the process, and that what I mean by multivariate testing is testing many components or elements in a single direct mail program all at the same time. And we're creating our test matrix focusing on two things: creation of a rock-solid targeting plan, list sources, segmentation, timing, and the second issue is creating a winning control mailer, so the right offer, format, messaging, design, call to action. For new programs, there are often a lot of unknowns, so we can't immediately answer every question, but we start by identifying what we know and what we don't know, and then we prioritize the questions and try and focus on the most important issues first. So let's look at an example of our process, which we call the rapid performance method. And this is a test we developed for a well-known client in the insurance industry. We're basically dramatically increasing the chances of finding a winning approach, and through this testing process we're minimizing risk and generating more valuable insights. And this same process also works with great results for customer programs and to find breakthrough performance in existing programs. So let me walk you through this example. First, we start by developing our best hypotheses about what we should do in terms of package format, in terms of offer, list targeting, and we do as much research as we can to steer our overall test ideas in the right direction. And then we put together this matrix, and in this example we tested two package formats, 3 different offers within those packages, 4 different lists with multiple list segments from each list source. And so this test matrix has about 60 test cells, which is 60 chances to find success. The overall test was 90,000 pieces, and we can accomplish testing like this with smaller programs, and we often do test programs similar to this with much larger quantities as well. When we get into reading the results, we're tracking the response and the sales, and ultimately we look at the results in terms of the financial goal set by the client. And in this case, the goal was to continue the program was $100 cost per sale or under. So while the overall test program didn't quite reach that goal in the first attempt here, we got a 107 average cost per sale. We can look at the performance zones within the test, and we can make comparisons to determine the best possible path for rolling out a winning program. So in this example, we saw package B and offer 3 was the biggest winner. Offer 1 also did pretty well in this case, but offer 3 was the top performing offer. And then list 2 beat the other lists overall, with list segments A and C within that list generating the best results across both packages and both offers. So when we take these learnings forward into the next program where we validate the initial test findings at a higher quantity, it allows us to ensure predictable and repeatable results, and then we can move forward and roll out with a program that's going to reach the client's financial goals and be low risk and very predictable in its performance. So by applying this testing approach, we've been able to achieve winning programs within a very short amount of time, over 90% of the time. And it accelerates learning from sometimes what could take years to figure out in direct marketing down to a really short timeline of 3 to 4 months. So it's much more effective than an iterative testing approach. Then when we move out of the initial testing phase and we move forward with that winning approach into rollout, we have to focus on a control, and we want to move forward with that control and stick with it for the majority of the program, and that gives us predictable results and allows us to scale the program up and drive growth. So depending on how well the program is doing and a few other factors, we're recommending our clients stay with about 70 to 90% of their program in the control approach. The other 10 to 30% we want to use for continued ongoing testing. And the biggest reason for this is that we're always pushing for continuous program improvement. We also want to continue gaining market intelligence, and we have to continue testing from clients who mail aggressively through their markets because we want to avoid market fatigue. And through testing, we can actually find and create multiple control packages which they can use in rotation, and that helps a lot in preventing market fatigue.
So the title of today's webinar, Rick, is Do More with Less. So let's take a few minutes or a few moments to address this topic directly. What are a few things that our attendees should consider in order to do more with less?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that companies can do to create improvements in their direct marketing programs is to have a really honest and thorough review of what they're doing today. Starting with their testing and analysis and their underlying strategies, and then moving into looking at their lists and targeting offers and creative, the actual tactics that they're using in their mailings. So I think it's a good idea to bring together your internal team and take a hard look at each of those success factors in your program and identify the areas of opportunity to make some changes and improvements, and look really critically at what you've been doing and set the priorities for testing and program development moving forward so that you can evolve your program to where it needs to be. Especially important, I think, to look at targeting and your list selection strategy. As I said earlier, if you can increase your mail that's going to people who are likely to respond and cut out that mail to those who will never respond, you're going to gain a lot in your results. So the other thing I want to mention is, in my experience, it can also be extremely difficult for a team to look back on what they've been doing and to be really critical. So I think it's also a great idea to have an outside review and to get a fresh perspective and generate new ideas. And outside opinions can bring you a lot of new information about what's generating high performance in other industries. So I think that has a lot of value and worth for clients. And also, number 3 is to test cost-cutting ideas and like fewer elements or cheaper package formats, and test into these to make sure you can pull costs out of the package without hurting your responses and your sales. I've also written a white paper on testing best practices, and I'm happy to share that with everyone on the webinar. There'll be a chance to request that at the end as well.
Well, thank you so much, Rick, for all great advice regarding direct mail marketing best practices, pitfalls that can kill results, and as well as some great ideas on how we can all do more with less. And folks, thanks so much for the great questions coming in. Got you there, Margaret, Andre, Beth, Yvonne, a bunch of others. We'll be getting to them in just a moment. Before we do that, I would like to go to our final poll. And so coming up on your screen, we'd like to hear from you. Which of the following actions will help you achieve your 2013 direct marketing goals? Feel free to select as many as apply. Request the testing white paper and tracking template that Rick was indicating. Implement rapid performance testing. Work to improve your creative. Request a direct mail review from a professional, or maybe you got it covered and you're good. Let's go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. If you do request that testing white paper and the tracking template, if you raise your hand for that, we'll get that out to you after the webinar. And we'll be sharing out everybody's input in just a moment. Still have some great questions coming into the queue. Let's take a look what everybody has to say here. Looks like just about 69% of you looking for that white paper. 33% implement rapid performance testing. 39% work to improve creative. 13% request a direct mail review from a professional. And 20% of you have it covered. Thank you so much for the input. And without further ado, I would like to share with all of you how you can continue the conversation if you'd like to do so. Got some information here on the screen where you can get in touch with both of our presenters today, Rick Rappe and Linda Pophal. We've got LinkedIn profile as well as websites. They both encourage you to pick up the phone, give them a call if you have some questions that you'd like to clarify. They're certainly there to assist you. And we'll be sending this information also in the thank you email that you'll be receiving following our webinar. All right, Linda and Rick, if I can have you back at the virtual podium, we're going to start with some of the questions that have come in. And this first one to you, Linda.
Okay.
And Sarah's asking, do you recommend the use of email for customer communications?
Okay, that is a great question, and yes, I absolutely would. And one of the key things here is that you're communicating with an audience that is already connected with you, and so some of the barriers that you might run into if you were just mailing people who you didn't have a relationship with really don't exist. So email can certainly be a very cost-effective and very efficient and quick way of reaching out to customers, whether you're offering them additional information that might be useful to them in some way, following up on a service issue, doing promotions, whatever it might be. But absolutely, I would say it definitely is.
Thank you. And folks, just so you know, if you check the chat, Patty in the background there has sent over all that contact information. So if you want to copy it locally, you're welcome to do that. This next question over to you, Rick. And Andrew's asking, what do you think about integrating QR codes into your mail program?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a lot of hype on QR codes, and we've used them with a lot of success for some of our clients, but I wouldn't call them a best practice yet at this point. I've just seen a lot of really misguided QR code campaigns, unfortunately. So I think that the first problem with QR codes is that consumer adoption is lagging behind the enthusiasm of the marketing world. So even though mobile and smartphone use has exploded, the group of people who know about QR codes and what they are and how to use them is really quite small. So when you take out the marketing folks, the group is even much smaller. So I think when you think about a QR code campaign, it really boils down to you have to think about the value of the destination you're driving them to. And we're developing some new QR code programs right now where we're driving people to video content. And what we really have to test in this situation is to measure how the video content engages the audience when they do go there, and does it generate the next action that we ultimately need to create, which is the response, and ultimately we have to make the sale. So if you're going to use a QR code, just be sure you create a mobile optimized landing page experience. And as with any traditional landing page experience, make sure that it continues the story and the message that you started in the outbound campaign. And I think as with everything you do, you should be testing options to optimize your conversion, and so you understand and you know what the impacts of that QR code are, and you have good data to support your rollout decisions ultimately.
Okay, Linda, this one from Andres. And Andres would like to know, who would you suggest would be good for providing an outside perspective, especially when you want to continue to do things in-house?
Good. That's a great question. And I get my first piece of advice that is very, very important is that you kind of first commit to listening to the advice that you hear. One of the things that I have run into often with clients and colleagues as well is that we tend to take an inside-out approach to a lot of the feedback that we get, and we fall in love with our own ideas to a certain degree, and so it can be painful and challenging to hear feedback from others, but definitely an important thing to do, and you really have to kind of let go of some of your own biases in doing that. I would say the best people to get outside perspective from will generally reflect your target audience. So if you're able to get feedback from people who are part of your actual target group, that can always be very, very helpful, and you really need to listen to them. I often also tell audiences that they can learn a lot from each other, from their colleagues, and maybe, exchange materials and give each other feedback from. So I think there are options for you to get that feedback if you want to do things in-house, but I definitely would say that outside perspective is invaluable, and particularly if you're committed to listening to what you hear.
Okay, over to you, Rick. Margaret's asking, in terms of personalization in direct mail, how does that compare with email? Because you can do that with email as well, so it's not necessarily a competitive advantage.
Well, you can use personalization, I think, more in more interesting ways in direct mail, just because you have the ability to send people a much more robust message in direct mail. Email has to be, very brief. You have one page, and ideally on an email message you're going to try and keep everything above the fold that's important. So you can work personalization into an email, and that's definitely an important aspect of email marketing as well. I just think you can do a lot more with it in the direct mail package. Personalizing things in small volume runs, you can use variable data printing to personalize images, but you can, within larger volume runs, you can use, we use lasering, and we personalize the name and use people's names throughout the message, and that really helps pull people through the messaging. There's something important about being able to see your own name, and it really draws people in. But we also are using variable copy, so that we're addressing the copy to the target audience and trying to make the message as relevant as we possibly can. So I just think there's more that you can do with it in a direct mail format.
Okay, one more for you, Rick, and this one's coming from Beth. What is the best method for testing a direct mail offer?
The best method for testing a direct mail offer?
Yes.
You want to test your offers head-to-head in similar creative and try to isolate that variable so that you can get a real true read on your offer performance. Ideally, through our process of rapid performance method testing, you want to test offers, multiple offers at the same time is the fastest way to get to a winning offer. If you just do a simple A-B offer split, you're definitely going to learn, does A outperform B, but you may not get as far as you need to go as fast as you need to get there. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, if you didn't, of course, the person that asked is welcome to put in a follow-on question, and we can dig a little deeper.
Okay.
This one over to you, Linda. And Andrew's asking, what mistakes do you see people making in direct marketing?
That is a good one, and we've covered a few of them. I think initially one of the big things that I see in direct marketing and marketing in general is not having a really very thorough and detailed understanding of your target audience. And then from a direct mail standpoint in particular, not thinking very creatively and strategically about how you might reach out to them through the many, many sources of lists that are out there. And it really requires thinking at a very specific and precise level, and being creative about trying to find those touch points that will uniquely connect with your market in ways that are relevant to them and at a point in time when they're most amenable to hearing your message. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes is just not taking that time up front to be strategic and extremely thoughtful in the planning process so that you're connecting with the right people.
Okay, this one over to you, Rick. Yvonne's asking, if the majority of lists are prospect lists, list rentals, what has been the best tracking method?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure if I understand it.
I'd be happy to. If the majority of lists are prospect lists / list rentals, what has been the best tracking method?
Well, when we use that database to mail out, the best tracking method is to put coding on the mail piece, like an offer code or a tracking code. And in my opinion, the best method for tracking is to get your sales reps to record that code, to ask the person who's calling in, can I have your offer code? Write that number down or put it into a database or a electronic format, obviously. But to capture those codes is the best way to track. And then once you have all those codes, you've got a database of your responders, you can put that back against your mail files and you can do the analysis of your list performance and the appended data within those lists. So ultimately we're trying to get our results captured in some method at the individual record level and then import that back into our mailing file, and that gives us the ability to generate reports based on the offer, the creative, the list source, and then the segments within that list. You can use other methods for tracking, like individual 800 numbers, but that's a lot more difficult to get really detailed tracking because you're not getting down to the individual level. So ultimately, you have to get that responder tracked and matched back to the database. So another way we do that, if we have a difficulty, is we take the sales data on the back end and match it back to the mailing file, and that doesn't necessarily give us the response information, but it gives us the sales information, and so we can look at of the people that we mailed to, how many of them ultimately purchased, and then we can make decisions about our lists and our targeting and things like that just based on the sales data if we have to.
All right, Rick, while I have you, one from Tiffany. With the rapid testing example shown, with the small quantities per test cell, was this method statistically relevant?
Well, we set aside statistical validity on the individual test cell level in the initial test when we do that type of a test structure, because we're looking for hot zones. We're looking at the columns and we're looking at the rows going across initially. So we're collapsing things and looking at them that way. We've found that you don't have to have statistical validity to get a very strong idea of the right direction to move forward in. And then what we're able to do is do a larger a second effort where we're increasing the quantities and validating the results and making sure that our statistical data is and the results are going to hold true at a statistically significant level. It's really not that critical to have statistical validity, I've found over the years, if you're depending on how you're using the data and how you're reading the results.
Okay, this one for you, Linda. Samantha is asking, what is the biggest downfall of email marketing?
I think the biggest downfall of email marketing is just the negative backlash and concerns that are out there in the marketplace in terms of acceptance, to people sending you messages that you really don't want to receive. And I find it interesting because in the old days, obviously, junk mail was a big deal, and people complained about junk mail in their traditional mailboxes. And I found it fascinating that the vitriol is even worse in the email space, in the online space. People are concerned not only about full email boxes, but also about spam. They're afraid that their computers are going to be infected with viruses, and so they're just a large backlash in general. So it's becoming very difficult for marketers to kind of break through those concerns.
Okay, over to you, Rick. Andres is asking, any insights or best practices that you guys might have to relay regarding the use of direct mail in B2B?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember in B2B marketing that your audience is still made up of people. So people respond based on what people need, and they're still looking at your mailings with an eye for what's in it for them. So even in B2B marketing, it's important to think about emotional copy platforms and to still follow the same methodology of testing and learning what kind of offers people are going to respond to and what kind of targeting you have to put in place to really pinpoint your audience. So in B2B marketing, the process is very similar. It can be a lot more challenging because your quantities are much smaller, so you have to be more focused and really make sure that absolutely everything you're doing is streamlined and right to the point. But generally speaking, you know, direct mail is also still very viable and can be a very high performance tool for B2B marketers.
Okay, and this is going to be our last question for today, coming from Beth. This one's for you, Rick. Do pieces with a business reply mail attached generate more response? I.e., please contact me at this number to talk about this product, or is that old school anymore? And I can give that to you again if you need it.
I know I understand the question. I do understand the question, and it's a good one. Does the business reply card or business reply envelope really play a role in this day and age? And yeah, it does. For some clients, they still are using business reply mail to get people to respond, and it does seem to have a role. Especially in B2B marketing, I've found that people are much more likely to, in some cases, to send back a business reply card for more information, rather than they might be reluctant to pick up the phone and call because they don't want to talk to a salesperson. So they'll tear something off and send it back for more information. So it's a good lead generation tool in B2B marketing. In consumer marketing, we're tending to drive harder for a direct response that's more quick, like through the phone. But even some of our clients have the need to get forms back filled out. And in those cases, we definitely have to include a business reply envelope just as part of the process, so that when people want to take us up on our offer, they have to mail back information so that they can do that.
All right. Well, folks, we are rubbing up against the top of the hour here. Would like to give Linda and Rick a moment to leave you with some closing comments. I'll start with you, Linda. Anything you'd like to say to folks as we close out today?
Sure. Well, I guess the main message that I would have again is kind of going back to our original premise that direct mail is not dead. And one of the ways that I like to look at this when I talk to people, because I'm still a strong proponent of print, even though I'm in the online space a lot, and that is that if you think back historically to, communication started with live theater, which gave way to radio and to television and to movies, etc. None of those things replaced the previous things. So we still have live theater. There is still a place for it, and I believe the same is true of direct mail. We not only do we still use it, but given the situation online, I think it's going to become even more prevalent. So if you've not jumped in or you haven't used it as aggressively as you might, I definitely encourage you to do that.
Thank you very much, Linda. And how about you, Rick?
My closing advice would be to look at direct mail as an entrepreneur looks at their business. So test in small quantities so that you're not investing an enormous amount in your testing. But once you find that proven approach and you can prove that you have a profitable and a winning method, then you can begin to expand on that, scale it up, roll it out, and manage that rollout so that you have predictable ongoing performance.
Excellent advice, both of you. Thank you again so much. And folks, we are at that time, and I'd like to thank each of you for joining us today. Hope that you found today's webinar of value and you'll want to join us for future events. You'll be again receiving a short survey at the end of the webinar. Please do take a moment to fill it out. Additionally, for a number of those questions that we couldn't answer on air today, we will have responses sent out to you via email as soon as possible. A copy of today's recorded webcast will be made available as an on-demand viewing, and you'll be receiving it in the way of an email with a link in order to access it early next week. Special thanks again to our speakers, Linda Pophal and Rick Rappe, and our sponsor, RPM Direct, for making today possible. And again, as your moderator, this is Lori Dearman saying thank you and have a great rest of the week. Goodbye for now.